My name is Clara Reynolds. I'm 33 years old and live in Denver, Colorado. If there's one thing that has always set me apart from my family, it's this. I have never once been trusted, even a little. My father, Gerald Reynolds, used to be the head accountant at a large construction firm. My mother, Linda, stayed home but ran the household like a corporate executive. They always talked about planning, stability, and tradition. Three things I've never managed to fulfill in their eyes. To them, I've always been too different, too dreamy and unrealistic. I have a younger sister, Madison, 2 years my junior. From an early age, she was the center of attention. Her golden hair, charming smile, and natural social ease made her the family pride. As for me, I was only mentioned as an example of what not to do. I once overheard my mother telling her friend during a women's club gathering at our house, Clara, she still hasn't found a clear direction. She likes those creative little things. But Madison, she just got a scholarship to Northwestern and will be interning at a prestigious law firm. She said it right in front of me, as if I didn't exist. Since high school, I've loved spatial design and user experience. I used to sketch out new layouts for our living room, rearrange lighting myself, and even designed a new menu board for the little cafe where I worked weekends. But in my mother's eyes, those were just silly distractions. Don't waste time on things that don't make money, Clara. You should think about accounting or office management. At least those are stable jobs. My father mostly stayed quiet until I applied for an interior design program at a local community college. Interior design? So you want to be someone who arranges chairs for a living? We didn't save hundreds of thousands of dollars so you could pursue something like that. That wasn't advice, it was a verdict. Meanwhile, Madison had everything covered. Full tuition, dorm fees, a new laptop, even a supplementary credit card for emergencies. I, on the other hand, worked morning shifts at a diner from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., then attended evening classes. I once fell asleep on the bus ride home after 2 straight nights of sleeping less than 3 hours. Not once did anyone ask if I was tired. During Christmas when I was 26, the whole family gathered. Madison received a Rolex with a card that said, "To our daughter, may you always succeed in your career." I got a small box with a notebook that read, "Plan your future." I almost laughed, not because of the gift itself, but the irony. It was like they were saying, use this to figure out where you're supposed to go, since clearly you've gone the wrong way. I never blamed Madison for being the favorite, but I couldn't ignore the injustice. She never had to prove anything. Meanwhile, despite getting straight A's, paying my own tuition and rent, I was still seen as the difficult one. I remember one dinner when my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "We just want what's best for you, Clara, but you keep drifting off course. This family doesn't even know what you want anymore." I clenched the edge of the table. My heart raced, but I said nothing, not because I didn't have words, but because I knew they weren't going to listen. Since I turned 27, I stopped talking about my life at family dinners. I didn't mention the design project I'd just won. I didn't share the article featuring me in a regional interior magazine. I learned to keep everything to myself because I realized they never really wanted to know. I began building my career in silence. No noise, no boasting, no need for applause. I understood that if I wanted to go far, I had to walk on my own feet, and I had to walk with certainty. At 24, after graduating from community college with honors in interior design, I moved into a 400 square foot studio apartment in Aurora, just outside Denver. Rent was $800 a month. I couldn't afford a desk, so I laid a wooden board across 2 short bookshelves. That was my first office. By day, I worked as an assistant designer for a small firm specializing in senior apartment renovations. In the evenings, I edited real estate interior photos for agents on freelance platforms. On weekends, I hand-sketched presentation boards for architecture students in urgent need. I once sketched nonstop from 8 a.m. until 3 a.m. the next day, only taking a 10-minute break to boil noodles. But I never saw it as suffering. I could see every step I was taking. Each finished draft was one more brick in the foundation I was building for myself. I remember clearly the first time I landed an interior design package for a luxury rental complex in Boulder. The project lead was a man named Samuel Price, a cautious, quiet director who had rejected 3 prior proposals from big firms. When it was my turn to present, I brought only hand-drawn sketches. No slides, no 3D models. Just paper and pencil. "You think these hand-drawn sketches are enough to convince me?" he asked, almost mocking. I replied with a line he later called charmingly defiant. "I don't need to convince you. The space will speak for itself when you walk into it." 2 weeks later, I received my first contract, worth $7,000. Not a huge sum, but it was the first time my name appeared on the official project board. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Madison. I filed a copy in a drawer and stuck a note on the front, "Start from here." I kept going like that, step by step. A year later, I opened my own office in a renovated basement in Littleton. I hung a sign that said Rain Studio, just a shortened version of my last name. No one knew I was the owner. I liked it that way. Clients came by word of mouth, not through family connections or referrals. At 30, I was invited to speak at a conference in Seattle about multifunctional space design. My topic was redefining warmth in commercial environments. I shared how people feel when they enter a room and how light, texture, and color can heal the sense of exclusion. As I stepped off stage, a middle-aged woman approached. She introduced herself as Evelyn Burke, president of a boutique hotel chain called Solace, an emerging brand expanding into secondary cities. "Clara, you have something rare," she said. "Precision and emotion exist together in your work. That's not something I see often. Have you ever thought about working in hospitality?" I looked at her, stunned. I had never considered designing for hotels, but her question snapped something awake in me. Why not? 3 months later, I signed a contract to design the entire interior of the new Solace Hotel in Des Moines, Iowa. The first time I walked onto the construction site, the smell of cement, damp plaster, and sawdust felt like familiar perfume. I stood in the lobby, arms outstretched as if measuring the air. This wasn't just a project. It was my first imprint on a large scale, and the world would start to notice. Each night, I returned to the half-built hotel, sitting under harsh work lights to revise details late into the evening. Some nights, I fell asleep on my sketches, head resting on stacks of upholstery swatches. I never complained. I knew this. No one was going to hand me a seat at the table. I had to build my own. And if someone ever asked me, "Who gave you the right to think you could do this?" I'd answer, "No one. That's exactly why I could." I had no intention of owning a hotel. At the time, I simply thought it would be amazing to design a space from blueprint to grand opening. But real life doesn't ask if you're ready. It just throws you into the arena and waits to see if you'll stand your ground. The first hotel I bought was called the Marlin, located in downtown Sioux Falls, South Dakota. A 3-story building constructed in 1927, it had once been a symbol of local upper-class society until it sat abandoned for nearly 8 years due to financial disputes. I saw it for the first time while scouting locations for a furniture brand's showroom. The charcoal gray tile roof sagged, windows coated in dust, and a crooked sign read, "For sale by owner." The lettering faded by time. I stood in front of that door for 10 minutes, not out of regret, but because of the strange feeling in my chest. A pull I couldn't explain. When I called the number on the sign, the man on the other end said in a flat voice, "It's not worth it. 12 people before you walked away halfway. Weak foundation, broken electrical, and a leaky roof all over. That's just one thing. If I pay entirely in cash, will you sign the contract right away?" 2 weeks later, the Marlin was legally mine. Purchase price, $365,000. My bank account was nearly empty after that deal, but I wasn't afraid. I had a plan. I didn't hire a big renovation company. Instead, I called people I had worked with before, small contractors, independent craftsmen, the kind who quietly cleaned up sites after midnight. I invited them for coffee, showed them the design I had sketched over 3 sleepless nights. and said plainly, I can't offer high pay, but if this project succeeds, I'll hire you again for every hotel after this, and I won't forget any of you. 3 months later, the ground floor was reborn into a lobby breathing Art Deco with modern minimalism, glass pendant lights, dark leather chairs, matte finished oak paneling, and a whisper of cinnamon from a discreet diffuser behind the bar. Floors 2 and 3 became 18 boutique rooms, each with its own style, no two rooms alike. On opening day, I wore a simple black dress, standing in the lobby with a cold espresso in hand. No press, no ribbon cutting, just me, my crew, and a small wooden sign hanging on the glass window, now open, Marlin Boutique Hotel. For the next 3 months, every room was booked solid. Ratings on booking platforms skyrocketed. Midwest Living magazine unexpectedly reached out for an interview. They called the Marlin a quiet yet daring revival in the heart of a small city. 1 year later, I bought the Paloma, an abandoned hotel in Fargo, North Dakota, then the Wren in Lincoln, Nebraska. Every hotel I touched had the same story, once glorious, then forgotten. I didn't build new, I restored. People started calling me the storyteller in brick and stone. They didn't know I had slept on cement floors to save on hotel costs during the first renovation. They didn't know I had sold my old Mazda just to make payroll on time. They only saw me in trade magazines, velvet dress, wine glass, a gorgeous hotel in the background. I let them believe that, because they didn't need to know there were nights I cried, unsure if I could cover that week's paychecks. They only needed to know one thing. I never backed down. By the time I turned 33, I owned 6 boutique hotels scattered across the Midwest, from Des Moines to Billings. But no one in my family knew any of it. To them, I was still just Clara, the odd one who dropped out of a prestigious university to pursue bedroom decorating. I don't know if I've been silent for too long, or if my family simply never cared enough to ask. For the past 3 years, every time I came home, the conversation always centered around Madison. My younger sister, now the associate marketing director at a beverage corporation in Chicago. As for me, when I was mentioned, it was only as, Clara's still doing something with those old buildings, like I was some kind of wandering construction worker. My mother, Linda, often looked at me with a mix of pity and judgment, especially when I came home in a paint-stained jacket or with my hair tied up messily after coming straight from a job site. You should be more like Madison. She's always neat, punctual, and works in an air-conditioned office. I smiled, not arguing. No one in the family knew that my air-conditioned office was the top floor of the Sutton, a luxury hotel I had restored and now operated as a gem in the heart of downtown Kansas City. And then, in that very context, something ironic happened. One evening in early June, my mother called with an unusually cheerful tone. Clara, your father's turning 60. Madison and I are planning a surprise party, maybe somewhere a bit upscale. I'm considering that one hotel. The Sutton, I heard it's fancy, private, and has a beautiful bar. I froze for a few seconds, coffee cup in hand, nearly stilling in midair. The Sutton, my flagship hotel, the one I had spent nearly 11 months restoring and running from below zero, now considered a landmark of modern design in the region. Oh, that place sounds good, Mom, I replied casually. I've heard great things about it, too. But it's pretty pricey, she sighed. Might be a bit over our family's budget, and, well, not everyone fits in at places like that. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. I know some people in the industry. Let me check if there's a good deal available. I didn't mention that I was the one who approved pricing. I also didn't say that the presidential suite on the 15th floor was where I stayed during business trips. I just sent a quick message to Nadia, the operations manager at the Sutton. Family's booking a birthday party for my dad. Let them choose. When they call, give them 50% off, but don't say why. I'll show up that night, right on time. 3 days later, my mom called again, more excited than ever. Clara, they suddenly gave us a discount, said it was some internal reason. I don't really know, but what luck. Madison's covering half. And you? I could already guess the next part. You'll handle the staff tips, okay? I know your salary isn't high. but this way it's still fair. I agreed, of course. I would be tipping my own employees, the ones I paid monthly and had trained to deliver five-star service. Madison later texted me privately. Heard you know someone in the industry? Is that how we got that price? Kinda sketchy. Make sure you dress appropriately. Don't want the family to feel embarrassed. I was wearing a Ralph Lauren blouse and a Lafayette skirt when I read that message. I had just wrapped up a morning meeting with the management team of a $12 million investment fund. But I simply replied, "Thanks, I'll be ready." I wasn't sure why I still hadn't said anything. Maybe I wanted to see how far it would go. Or maybe I was just too tired of explaining to people who never truly listened. As the event approached, I quietly coordinated everything from behind the scenes. The menu was customized to my father's taste. A private event space named the Founders Room was specially reserved, featuring original artwork from a Colorado artist my father used to admire. A bourbon caramel cake was commissioned from a boutique bakery I partnered with in Boulder. No one knew I was the one behind it all. I arrived at the Sutton at exactly 6:40 p.m. Not early, not late, just in time for the guests to settle in. The lights to dim halfway and the jazz band on the balcony to shift into soft swing melodies. Snow drifted gently outside, making the glass foyer of the Sutton look like a music box being rewound. I stepped through the revolving doors in a navy Carolina Herrera dress. Not flashy, but unmistakably not someone from the general crowd. I hadn't even spoken to the front desk when a familiar voice called out from my left. "Clara?" I turned. It was Madison. Metallic evening gown, wavy hair, Chanel clutch in hand. Her eyes swept over me quickly as if scanning the price tags of everything I wore. Then she smiled, not kindly. "Oh, I thought you'd come in through the back. Staff usually uses that entrance, right?" I kept my smile. "Hello, Madison. I came in through the proper entrance, like any invited guest." She stepped closer, tilting her head like she was inspecting a clearance item. "Not sure if they have enough seating for you. The guest list got longer than expected." "Don't worry, I don't need a seat," I said, voice light as air. "And if you're going to just sit around and not order anything, please don't make them remind you. This is the Sutton, not some dive bar downtown." Before I could respond, my mother, Linda, rushed over like she was afraid I'd knock over a wine decanter in the lobby. "Clara, you really came. Good. Just remember," she tugged my arm gently and lowered her voice. "Don't do anything to embarrass the family. If you can't afford to contribute, at least keep it discreet. Don't draw attention, all right?" I looked at her. Not angry, not even sad. Just a familiar chill spreading through my chest like the old years flooding back. I was about to say something when Nathan, the head of security, approached, standing upright like he was welcoming a foreign diplomat. "Miss Reynolds, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to inform you that the event room is ready per your request. The wine has been chilled and the opening music is cued to Mr. Reynolds' favorite piece." My mother turned sharply. Madison squinted. "Per request?" Nathan didn't blink. "Yes, ma'am. Miss Clara reserved the Founders Room and oversaw the entire service list. We're honored she chose the Sutton for this special occasion." The air in the lobby froze. I could hear a wine glass clink against a tray in the far corner, the staff pausing mid-step. My mother's lips parted slightly. "What do you mean?" "Ma'am," Nathan said with a level of professionalism that was almost ruthless, "Miss Claire Reynolds is the owner of this hotel. She has signed every operational document for the Sutton since it opened." Madison's eyes went wide, like she had just been slapped across the face. "What? You're the owner?" I nodded, calmly. "For the past 3 years." My mother gripped the back of a nearby chair. She didn't fall, but she couldn't stand upright anymore. "Why didn't you say anything?" Because you never asked," I replied, my tone no louder than usual. "Because every time I tried to share, you brushed it off. Because to you, I've always been the one who needed to get back on track." A moment of silence, heavy and echoing. I turned to Nathan and gave a small nod. Open the doors. He bowed slightly and pushed open the double doors to the founder's room. Inside, soft lighting fell over framed artwork on the walls. A piano played the tune of Misty, and my father, Gubo, Avi, was chatting with old friends, turning his head just as I stepped in. I smiled and walked into the room, where everything was ready. My father, Mr. Gerald, didn't say anything right away when he saw me step into the elegant room he believed had been organized by Madison. He just stood there, eyes narrowing slightly, as if needing a moment to confirm that the woman in the navy Carolina Herrera dress was indeed the stubborn daughter he once called a failed dreamer. I approached him and gently kissed his cheek. "Happy birthday, Dad." He remained silent, but I felt his hand rest lightly over mine. Not cold, not shaky, just steady. My mother and Madison entered the room less than 10 seconds after me, like two uninvited guests unable to avoid the spotlight. Every eye turned to them, not out of admiration, but because they had just insulted the host of the entire evening back in the lobby. Madison stood frozen, trying to maintain a fake smile, but unable to mask the shock in her eyes. My mother had already slipped back into her familiar mask, calm, polite, and fully denying that she had ever uttered, "Don't embarrass the family." Dinner played out like a stage play, but this time I wasn't in a supporting role. I sat at the head of the table, to my father's right, directly across from Madison and my mother. My father's longtime friends kept complimenting the design, the ambiance, the food. Someone asked who was behind every detail. My father turned to me amid the clinking of glasses. "You arranged all this?" I nodded, gently placing my wine glass down on the coaster. "I approved every item on the menu. The wine came from my private cellar." I looked at him. "The song that played when you entered was Misty, the one you used to play every Sunday morning back in Fairview, remember?" His face softened. He nodded slightly, needing no words, but in his gaze, for the first time in years, there was no doubt, no comparison. My mother gave a soft cough. "So, the Sutton really is yours?" "You're sitting in a hotel I rebuilt from the foundation up," I replied evenly. "All 6 hotels from South Dakota to Missouri are mine." Madison set her glass down with more force than necessary. "But what about the Hawaii trip? The anniversary last year? Mom said it was a gift from some distant relative." I smiled. "There's no distant relative. I funded that gift. Just like the espresso machine Dad likes, the pearl jewelry Mom got for Christmas, and the New Year's check signed a family friend." My mother frowned, eyes flashing with irritation. "Why hide it? If you could help, why not just say so?" I placed my fork and knife down on the napkin and looked straight into her eyes. "Because every time I said something that didn't fit your mold, you dismissed it." I paused long enough for the words to settle. "I didn't hide. I stopped sharing when I realized you weren't listening." No one responded. Madison glanced at my mother, then looked away. She had never imagined she'd be the one left trying to save face in front of a crowd. My father broke the silence. He turned toward me, raised his glass. "I'm not good at showing it, Clara, but tonight I have to say it. I'm very proud of you." I almost staggered, not from the wine, but from that simple sentence. All the years of effort, of bus rides in the freezing night, of rewriting blueprints until 4 in the morning, finally acknowledged in the words I had once dreamed of hearing at 20 years old. Madison muttered into her wine glass. Unbelievable. I heard her, but didn't react. I didn't have to, because the truth didn't need her belief. It was alive in every detail around the table. The way the servers bowed to me, the private dessert plate from the chef tailored to my taste, and the way the entire room hushed as I raised my glass to speak. Thank you all for joining the celebration, but more than anything, thank you, Dad, for being the first to teach me that if you want to be respected, you must work for it like it matters. No applause, but no one looked away. The party continued, but I knew something had shifted. And I, after all these years, had finally stepped out from the shadow they had once drawn for me. 2 days after the party, I received 8 missed calls from my mother, 4 texts from Madison, 1 email from my father. None of them had sorry in the subject line. None asked, "Are you okay?" Most circled around one thing: we need to talk, in private, as soon as possible. I didn't respond right away, not because I was avoiding them, but because I needed to prepare. That evening, I sat down with Aiden, my legal advisor and most trusted friend throughout Sutton's expansion. We had faced flaky partners, last-minute investor withdrawals, and high-profile clients who played mind games, but none of them were as dangerous as family members who felt entitled to own you simply because they'd been controlling you since childhood. "I don't want to fight," I said, eyes still fixed on the files I was marking, "but I need to set boundaries. Clear, unmistakable." Aiden nodded, his voice firm. "When power and money aren't paired with respect, people will always test your limits unless you stop them." We drafted a letter, personal in tone, but with a legal backbone. I called it a boundary agreement. Not something that needed a signature, but something that would be sent as a declaration. That I was no longer the daughter they could treat like a shadow. I sent individual letters to each family member on Tuesday morning. To my mother, I wrote, "From now on, I ask that you schedule visits in advance before coming to my office or home. If you need anything related to finances, please send a clear and detailed email instead of making phone requests. I'm willing to help within a framework of respect and transparency, but I won't provide support under emotional pressure or claims of family obligation." To Madison, "Little sister, I hope we can build an adult relationship, not one based on rivalry, comparisons, or silent resentment. Any ideas for business collaboration, if they arise, must go through official channels. I won't offer discounts, favors, or sponsorships for your company based on personal ties. If we're to work together, you'll go through the same process as any client." And to my father, the shortest message of all. "Dad, I appreciate the change I saw in you at the party. I hope we can continue to connect, but this time built on mutual understanding and real respect, not just a family dinner performance." Responses came that same afternoon. My mother called, but I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, her tone sharp. "You wrote to me like I'm a business partner, not your mother. If that's how you want to define this relationship, then I won't interfere anymore." I sat quietly in my office, looking out at the building across the street through reinforced glass. That message didn't hurt. It confirmed what I had suspected for a long time. My mother wasn't upset about losing closeness. She was upset about losing control. Madison was different. She texted briefly. "Got it. But if you think owning a few hotels makes you better than everyone, you're delusional." I didn't respond. Because I didn't think I was better than anyone. I was simply living as an equal to myself, something they never allowed me to do. My father didn't call, but the next morning, a bouquet of purple tulips, my favorite, was delivered to my office with a handwritten note. "Thank you for being direct. This time, I'll learn to listen." Just one sentence. But for the first time, I believed he meant it. In the weeks that followed, my phone stayed surprisingly quiet. No more late-night calls asking for urgent loans, for Mom. No more texts like, "Send me the hotel link for my friends." Sutton ran smoothly. The other hotels in the chain reported a slight uptick in quarterly profits. I met with Aiden again to discuss expanding to the West Coast. No one from the family was invited. The boundary had been drawn, and this time, I didn't sketch it with words. I built it with action, with finality, and with one undeniable truth. Family ties are not automatic entitlements. No one, not even the people who gave you life, has the right to belittle you and then expect special treatment once you succeed. I didn't need their admiration. I just needed them not to cross the line anymore. One morning in mid-March, I stood in front of the auditorium at Colorado State University, watching the seats gradually fill with young faces, mostly women, many stepping out of their comfort zones for the very first time. I had been invited to speak to senior students in the spatial design program, but this time, I wasn't there as a successful entrepreneur or an inspirational speaker. I was there to introduce something new, the RAIN Foundation, my first scholarship fund, created specifically for young women aspiring to enter the hospitality, design, and service-based management industries. I had never spoken in public without trembling, but that day, as I stepped onto the podium, I felt an unusual calm, maybe because I knew I no longer needed anyone to validate my worth. I had already proven it. Through every square foot of concrete I'd transformed into a living space. I used to work 3 jobs at once, I began. I was called the girl who sets up chairs for hire. But I never gave up, not because I was stronger than others, but because I never believed what they said about me. The rows went silent. Some people teared up, others nodded. I saw myself in them. Not perfect, not born blessed, but stubborn enough to survive and grow. 3 months later, I received nearly 300 scholarship applications. Choosing the first 10 recipients was the hardest thing I had ever done. I didn't just read transcripts, I read handwritten letters, rejection stories, and dreams that had been crushed because no one believed in them. When I called the final recipient, a girl named Sarah from a small town in Montana, she didn't believe I was real. "Are you joking?" she asked. "No. You're one of the first 10 to receive a RAIN scholarship, and I hope one day you'll be the one sitting in this seat, choosing the next generation." We were silent for a moment, then Sarah broke into tears, not because of the money, but because for the first time someone had called her name in a crowd and said, "I believe in you." On Sutton Hotel's 1-year anniversary, I hosted a small exhibition in the grand lobby. The walls were lined with photos of the projects I had designed, but in the center I placed a wooden sign carved with these words: "Freedom begins the moment you stop asking others for permission to be yourself." I received interview requests from 3 major magazines. A local TV station wanted to film a feature. I turned down most of them, not out of modesty, but because I understood. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The work I did, the person I'd become, and the generations I was lifting, they spoke on my behalf. One Friday evening, as I sat in the rooftop garden of Sutton, watching the city lights shimmer in my wine glass, my phone rang. It was Madison. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. "Do you have a few minutes?" she asked. "I'm not calling to blame you. I just wanted to say thank you for everything, even the things I don't fully understand." Her voice had no sarcasm, no bitterness. There was something genuine. I didn't ask what had changed. I simply said, "When you're ready to start over," not as someone's little sister, not as a stand-in for anyone, but as yourself, "I'll still be here." I hung up, not hopeful, not disappointed, just one small step. And that step was enough to make me smile. I no longer live to prove anything. I live to build, to protect my values in a world that changes its standards every day. Maybe my mother never truly recognized me. Maybe my father will only ever understand part of me. Maybe Madison will always be on the sidelines, waiting for a chance to strike back. But I no longer live through their eyes. I live through what I've created. Hotels, scholarships, a path forward, and through the quiet in my heart when I know I am enough, I am worthy, and I don't need anyone's permission to shine. Clara's story is a powerful reminder that success doesn't require permission from those who once underestimated you. When you have the courage to stand up, set boundaries, and live by your values, you don't just transform your own life, you inspire others. In the real world, the most meaningful validation doesn't come from family, society, or fame. It comes from the moment you know you're worthy and no longer need anyone else to say so. What do you think about Clara's choices and journey? Would you have done the same if you were in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories.